Board of Sign Language Interpreters Rules Advisory Committee meeting is convening at 9:47 a.m. on February 5th, 2005. This meeting is being held in person and through Zoom video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing. I will now call roll. Darcy? Here. Natalie?
Oh, here.
Mel?
Yep.
Lori?
Here.
Caitlin?
Here.
Chrissy? Amanda?
Here.
Deanna, are you on? Okay, no. Nissa?
Here.
Members, when you wish to speak, please state your last name for the record. Please state your first name. Committee members are asked to not use the chat feature during meetings. The health licensing office asks that individuals attending through Zoom keep their phones muted and cameras during the entire meeting or until they are given an opportunity to comment during the public and interested parties feedback period if indicated on the agenda. Public comment is limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what the committee has statutory authority to regulate. Public members wishing to speak, please sign in on the roster sheet available in the front and email Josh at josh.page@oha.oregon.gov and provide your first and last name. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners.
Stay with you, hold on just a second. I need to fix the email. Josh, don't. Thank you.
Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocols when they're conducting committee business. Meeting is now called to order. Okay, we have a pretty full agenda. I'm going to kind of breeze past the first few things because we do have a presentation that's supposed to start at 9, but we can come back to some of these things that if you want to talk about them more, like scheduling additional meetings, I want to definitely do that today. But we can come back to that after the presentation. So today I'm going to give you a couple overviews of things that are kind of been going on in the works, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, whatever. We're going to have a presentation from the Oregon Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services Advisory Committee members. I believe Danica's going to do it. She will also be a new member on the lab next week. Then we'll do an executive session, get legal advice, and then we'll dive into the rules and start working on those again. So there are some new rules for public meetings that came out in October. So, and it's basically if we do things that are outside of the public meetings law, then committee members can be held accountable individually as a whole. So, for example, when we're in executive session, we have to stay within the parameters of what that topic is, so legal advice. So we can't talk about policy stuff during that time. But we're here to make sure that doesn't happen. It's part of our job. A few other things. Probably one of the most important things is that the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, who is overseeing public meetings law, which is new, they actually have civil penalty authority, and they're really watching very closely.
To what authority?
Civil penalty. They haven't issued a fine yet, they've only done education, but they are watching, so people are making complaints. And they have a new complaint process, so if something happens here and somebody makes a complaint, they make it actually to HLO, to the committee, and then we respond in a certain amount of time. Still working that out, not sure about that one. But yeah, so we're here to keep everybody kind of in mind. The other thing that's gonna feel weird is when I read in the public comment speech, it's a little harsher than normal. So it's basically if somebody wants to comment, they have to stay within the parameters of the topics on the agenda. And the chair, which will be Darcy, can stop them at any time if they're not doing that or they're disrupting or anything in that. But it feels weird when it's being read, so that's the gist. of everything, and I'm happy to send this to you guys, so.
Can we get some specific kind of example about what like off topic might look like?
Yes, well, you guys got a lot of stuff on here, so I don't know that,
Yeah.
I can't think of anything right now, to be honest.
That's all right.
I mean, you guys really have everything on here.
I mean, if you start talking about
Hairdressers.
right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's probably more if something's very controversial and it keeps coming up. And it's like, we're not doing that today. So they can go, nope, we're gonna do that at a different time, give us written comments. So it's more in that arena. Than, I don't know that it's really gonna happen. So we'll see how it goes. And I'll send you that and you guys can read through it. The next item is 2025 legislation. I assume everybody's seen Senate Bill 950, and we can come back to this if you want to talk about it more. So what it does is removes the specialty, the educational, medical, and legal license, so repeals those. It still has some parameters around renewal.
I'm sorry, Sammy. I don't know if Darcy caught that.
Oh.
Can you say that again?
Senate Bill 950. So it's a specific to sign language interpreter board. And so it repeals, takes away the education license, legal, and medical license. So those will be gone. It creates,
Whoa, wait. Okay, sorry. Do you mind just saying that part one more time?
it will take away the medical, legal, and education license.
Go ahead, Amanda. So this is Amanda. Where is that bill in the process?
It's just sitting there as an introduced bill. It's going to be referred to a committee, that's about it. Yeah, healthcare, Senate healthcare.
And that you said that Senate Bill 950 is new?
We got it last week.
And that is to remove those 3 licenses.
Oh, it does many other things as well.
Does it keep the generalist, the supervisory, what was the other one?
Yeah.
So it changes the license to be more generalized, more simple, is that my understanding? Is that the goal of that Senate bill? I'm just trying to understand, it seems kind of thick, and this is new for me as well.
Oh, yes. So let me finish. So to remove those 3, it gives the board requirement, authority over setting fees. However, we don't know what fees and we don't know where the fees will go. So those are some questions we have, just administrative wise. It does keep the some of the renewal pieces in. It creates a sign language interpreter in training, which my understanding when I read this is it basically means that person is directly being supervised, like in human being right there. So that's a new license. And it can be renewed on a case-by-case basis. I do not know what that means. That is another question. So those are questions that we have. And that's the gist, I think.
Sorry, this is Lori. It's something related to license renewal, right?
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, so, yeah, so under the generalist, a license issued under this section may be renewed every 3 years. So it allows that one to be capped, you don't have to be a supervisor.
Oh,
Yeah, you can renew it every 3 years rather than annually. And the sign language interpreter in training is, like I said, on a case-by-case basis. Again, I don't have any idea what that means, but you have COVID here, you get it, and if you have straight, you don't, I'm not sure. This is what I read straight. I'm straight here. Supervision. Oh, yes. They have, so in the exception area, which is section, it's page, on a temporary basis not to exceed the number of days in the calendar year determined by the board if a person is authorized in another state or jurisdiction or otherwise qualified as determined by the board to provide sign language interpreting services. Someone doesn't have to have a license if that is. Now, what exceeds the number of days in a calendar year means, I haven't thought this. Feels like that's circular, but I don't know. We'll see.
This is Amanda. So I think the next part of that, not to exceed a calendar year as determined by the board, isn't that what you said? So the board would decide how many years within a calendar year. Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Because I think that's where people who like come in to interpret conferences or those kinds of things, they're not actually Oregon residents
I
or
know
workers, right? But yeah, so
But I'm not sure how you would exceed 365 days. This doesn't make sense.
you're not allowed to, it says right there. You're not allowed to exceed 365.
It's a question, so
We
we chose a
stop
question.
time bending, okay?
Sometimes there's leap years, Sammy.
They also will, they set some parameters around the fees, so, the board can establish fees, they have to use the national average, they have to consider the national averages for similar fees, funding requirements of the office as related to carrying out office duties, and, they have to establish fees for issuance and renewal of licenses under all the other provisions in this bill, and in establishing fees, they shall consider those things, so. And this is all supposed to be done by January 1st, 2026.
We learned nothing first 19. Why would that be the start date?
I haven't been literal on.
We're gonna pause for interpreter switch.
And provisional. And then provisionals still have a limit, so they renew every 3 years, but not more than twice. So 6, so they can have a 9-year license.
Yeah, 9-year license.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that? Many, I'm sure.
Legally, what does it mean to consider those parameters in fee setting? What does the word consider mean legally,
You're doing it right now. Think about it.
right? I mean, that, so like you can consider it, but it doesn't necessarily have to have a bearing on what.
Like when the RAC makes recommendations, the board has to consider them. That's it. So. Yes.
This is Natalie, and I'm just wondering, does it mention anything about the, like a good faith clause or anything in regards to video interpreters?
No. It has nothing about that. So if you want, I will send you, I mean, it's in your materials, but if you want, I can send it to you. Yeah.
I've been reading it on my phone.
I can send it to you so you have it like at the top. And then you can read it.
What page is it? Oh, look, it's right there.
Yeah.
Page, something, 16.
Oh, here we go. 13. Oh, because I added some. With my notes.
16.
And I'll send you this.
Can we hold for just a minute?
I'm reading it, but I'm not, is it under Senate 950?
Correct.
Because the one I'm reading, it looks like it was the other day. It's the one regarding fees, and instead of individual fees, doing an all-inclusive one. I was wondering if we're open for that for a license or something, or if we're discussing something else. Or talking about the paper that was sent.
So you guys sent documents for us to prepare, and in those documents, Darcy would say like she thought she read somewhere, somebody was saying like, could be a one fee instead of each specialty license having a fee. Was that this Senate Bill 950? Is that where that was mentioned, or was it something else you guys said?
It does say a fee, but I don't know what that means. If it's one fee only forever, I don't really know.
Right, it's vague.
But I didn't write anything specific about it.
I just didn't know if I needed to look into that further or.
I would. If we want to know.
This is Amanda. Natalie, I wonder if the video stuff might be maybe in that 365 days, as long as you're licensed somewhere else, right? Like that exception, was that, what was it called?
Temporary
Exception, right?
basis.
Temporary basis.
Oh, on a temporary basis. Right. So close. Yes.
But this, I mean, if it gets
What was
to,
it? You said temporary.
it's basically an exception
Okay.
to work on a temporary basis if you are from another state or jurisdiction or otherwise qualified. Do not be licensed necessarily, as determined by the board. So they're gonna determine who's otherwise qualified and how long in that 365 days. But if this gets to a hearing, that will be your opportunity to write comment. And I'll send you the link right to the overview of the bill, and then you can see testimony and you can actually sign up and get, every time the bill is, anything's done, you can sign up to get it. I'll do that.
This is Lori, and there's a really nice summary of this bill on the ORID website for anybody who wants to see it. It's just much more succinct and pretty.
So this is just a bill, a lovely old bill, and it hasn't passed anything yet, right?
It hasn't even got to a hearing yet.
Yeah, so this is
So,
something.
the process is, it was filed, and then it gets referred to a Senate committee, and Senate committee holds a hearing, generally holds a work session where they talk about all the comments, make any amendments. If they make an amendment, it has to go back to the committee, and then they vote that, and then it has to jump over to the other side, and the same thing has to occur. So another hearing, another work session, and then if it passes over there, good to go. But if they make a change over here, it's gonna go back over here. So, hopefully, it's a lot of process, but if it's something that's really being pushed in, you have to babysit bills. That's a really good way of, you gotta watch them, you gotta babysit, you gotta bug. That's kind of how you make sure it's getting done to some degree. So, and then it goes to the floor, they vote, and then the governor signs it or vetoes.
Will HLO be making comments about the bill?
Generally not.
This is Amanda. It would be super helpful though, because we've encountered things where the last bill was not even operationalizable, right? Like it wasn't even a thing that could happen. So is there a way that we can get, like, even if it's not HLO that makes the comment, can we get comment too? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if there's things in here that you just can't do, or like that's not how it's done, or it shouldn't be effective January 1st of 2026 because there's no time to implement it.
27, she said.
Oh, I thought you said 26.
No, 26. Wait, yeah, we want 27, it's
Right,
26.
yeah.
Oh.
Right, so like things like that of like.
Yeah.
It seems silly that there wouldn't be a comment.
Wait, say that again? Which one? You said 27?
26.
26. Okay, so 1 year.
And we can't start until September of 2025. We have 90 days to get rules, fees.
Right,
It's really not possible, but.
right, that's,
I mean, we did an analysis and it goes to our government relations
Okay.
and
okay.
where it goes from there, I do not know.
I don't wanna do this again.
I'll also say that Bob and I met with, some legislators and we kind of told them,
Okay.
we gave them a document, which I can send to you guys, kind of where we were having issues.
Yeah.
So,
I think that needs to be known.
yeah, they know.
Okay. I think we need to know that too. I don't just mean RAC, I mean like our community
Yeah,
of
it's
like,
basically everything that we talked about.
yeah,
I just
Okay.
gave it to them.
Okay, good. All right. so not necessarily public comment, but people know things.
You
Okay.
can give us a summary.
Right.
It's basically what it is.
Right. I think you can say things like, it's my understanding that. I heard.
I recall.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe some of this stuff makes it better
Sure,
because now a professional can work anywhere.
for sure.
Anybody, so those things are good.
The timeline is a problem.
Timeline for getting it, I mean, it's impossible. It's not possible.
Especially if other bills, this is Bob, especially if other bills that may come to us.
Yeah.
That signed to Sandy have the same effective date and timeline.
I don't know why we don't know why they do it. We don't know why they say 91 days after Sunny died. No one knows why. And then you have to have stuff in place by that next January. Nobody knows.
Yeah, this is Natalie, and the other thing is like, we're gonna be working on developing what's needed for all the different licenses, but then they're just gonna be in effect for like 6 months, and then this one should go in effect, so with the medical, legal, and the educational is not longer gonna be.
Yeah, and there is a little tidbit about that in here. On page 4, the license is issued under the 3 education, medical, and legal. Before the operative date, before January 1/26, is valid until the expiration date established by HLO. The holder of the license issued under those may, on and after the operative date specified in 12, January 1st, provide sign language interpreting services in settings determined by the Board of Interpreters.
It's probably some,
Does everybody order lunch?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
did
Can you say
everybody,
that again?
did everybody order lunch?
I think it was the previous one.
Yeah, I think misunderstood.
So.
Can you say that again, Sammy?
Yeah, so HLO will establish a date, an expiration date for all those licenses.
The interpreter just wants to clarify, this is what's in Senate Bill 950.
Correct. On section 11, page 4.
Section 11, page 4.
And then people can keep practicing after the operating date, January 1.
Hold on.
So, okay, let's back up just a minute, just to clarify. Senate Bill 950, if it does go through and it does pass, that would mean that the previous bill about interpreting, that's just gonna get thrown out, right? It'll be replaced essentially,
Incorrect.
because they're contradictory. There are 2 different bills.
So this is Sammy, so, House Bill 2696 created the board. The board is not being dismantled or repealed or sunsetted. They're just making changes to the now existing statute from House Bill 2696. So some of them stay in their arena, and some of them are going. So it
So
can be
the
in the
revision of the bill, Amanda says.
This is Mel. I'm curious is there a way to make a visual representation of like Senate Bill 27, whatever the 2797?
There's an HB.
An HB?
Yeah.
And then the proposed and like what stays and what goes? Not now,
Maybe.
like just so we could track
Yeah.
it better, like where do they merge? Or somebody else will do that, right?
This is Christy. If you look after this meeting at the ORID, it does exactly that. It spells out what the changes are. That means.
Thank you, Christy.
Any other questions?
Sorry, we did not know about the bill.
Yeah, sorry,
So,
we
That's
did.
okay, it just came out last week, like 1 week ago.
We're gonna go ahead and switch it to Chris.
This is Christy again.
Hold on just a second.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sammy, do you know which group proposed the changes to this bill?
It was proposed by Senator Solomon and Representative Miron. I don't know if that's right.
I guess what I'm meaning is the group that brought it to them for them to sponsor.
I do not know.
I believe that was ORID.
I don't think they've been involved. We met with the one senator, Jack, the previous chair was on the meeting. Jack. Okay, we can come back to this one. I don't wanna, we're already 15 minutes into Danica's time. The last three things are just kind of visuals and an update. So the EIPA is 1 year behind. They are storing stuff from last year, as you guys know. However, they do have some dates scheduled for the test, which I'm giving you links to that. The other thing is Jan is working on a permanent rule to adopt a temporary rule. So that will be in place by the expiration of the temporary rule. But if the one goes away, then who knows? We'll have to do something else. So I don't know how that will work. But that's just an FYI. Me and Bob also met with the Hospital Association of Oregon, and I'm waiting to hear back from them on, they're gonna put somebody on the rack. Probably they're gonna work in the medical area, but they'll be invited to everything, it just kind of depends. But they have some really good kind of administrative functions, like how is a hospital gonna get all of these things up and running, like realistically? Like bills are not realistic. There's actually administration of things that have to happen, so, and at that, and then they'll also give us, feedback on how to make things better. Hopefully I'll make sure that they have the bill. I'm sure that, Ruth has already seen it. Okay, so there's that, and then I also gave you the statistics, just because it's always fun to see. So you can see that by age and gender, you can see by how many from the state are licensed. That's on page 32. So like Florida has 77 people are licensed with the address of Florida.
Spot for clarification, they're licensed in Oregon.
Correct. They hold an Oregon license. And then, slide 33, you can see that,
This is Darcy, I have a question. So the different states that, does that include BRI interpreters? Is that what those numbers are representing?
that would be my assumption.
So I guess my question is, most of these are out-of-state licensors. What kind of interpreting are they tend to do? Are they doing medical? Are they doing legal? Like general service kind of interpreting, education? Does it specify, do the statistics talk about the specifications as to what they're actually doing? And makes this what kind of license they have, but not the kind of work that they're doing.
You can, on page 33, you can see that the educational,
It just be nice to figure out like what states are doing the bulk of what kind of work.
so break down by state, the license type.
So how much from, each individual state broke it down into the different categories of licensures? For instance, like what's the breakdown for each state?
Right, so you want the state and what each license is.
You have the total for other licenses for Oregon, but you don't necessarily have the education or the temporary or.
It's on page 33. Now, it doesn't break it down by state, so.
They have the provisional, educational, like all the different licenses. So I'm just thinking like does that impact, how do those numbers impact like the new Senate Bill 950?
Well, you can see that if you go to page 33.
So, because it doesn't necessarily what state, you know what I mean? I'm throwing that out there.
If you go to page 33 and you see the seven under educational, they're from another state, that will go away. Because we don't have an educational license. So if they want to continue to work in Oregon, they'll need to get a provisional and in training, a general or supervision. This bill also has a reciprocity clause. A reciprocity license for license.
This is Mel, like with Darcy, the reason I got curious about which state applied for medical or legal is if it's our neighboring states, so that I know they're actually coming in person versus the VRI aspect. Like how many of these were from Washington or Idaho or Utah or California that tend to work in our bordering states.
So you
I'm sure
want
geographically I got some of those.
each,
Yeah, you're totally right. 100%.
each license type.
I mean, that was as a curiosity, just because then I'm like, well, that could potentially be in-person interpreters versus just remote. That makes sense. Like if I know those interpreters are in Washington, Vancouver, whatever, they're gonna travel to Oregon as needed versus like, oh, I'm in Florida, I'm not hopping on a plane for that 2-hour job.
The VRI is very important.
Yeah.
We use it a lot.
Oh, absolutely, both. It's like both of
Not
them.
enough people. Yeah. And they're very much pushing signing and interpreting in government. I can send an email and say, there's not a lot of them. Not a lot of people like this. Okay, so I can do like a region one, so you can kind of see that next time. Nate's here.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I just
Okay,
think that would help to, again, it's related to like the deafblind, like where are those interpreters? Washington State is screaming for more deafblind interpreters. Oregon too. It's like, where are the interpreters coming from? Are they coming from Washington? Or is Oregon going to Washington, Washington going to Oregon? How do we support one another? We need to be able to support our communities across those borders. So we need to figure out like Southern Oregon too, California interpreters coming into Southern Oregon. So what are the different kinds of systems and support systems that are set up from us? So it'd be nice to see those statistics. Also, hearing interpreters, the statistics like what percentage of these are,
deaf interpreters versus hearing interpreters? And how are they supporting our community?
Unless they're required to put it on their application, we will never know. Okay.
There's no boxing check for like deaf interpreters.
I don't even know if that's on the demographics area.
I don't think it can be.
Well, they have gender or, like ethnicity and stuff, but I don't know if they have that.
It's voluntary.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
Yeah, they don't have to, this is they don't have to check the boxes, applicants don't have to, because they decide to.
Okay, I think we'll go to Danica. We apologize for the extended talk about Senate Bill 950. And I guess just started. So Bob and I met with Danica and John Curtis and Curtis, yeah, and Eileen Marma last week, and they gave us some concerns and wanted to make a presentation to that. So that's what the meeting. Take it away, Danica.
We're gonna need just a second to get the laptop set up for interpreters. And could we get Danica spotlighted, please, so she's bigger, because she will be signing. Who's presenting, can you get her spotlighted, because she's gonna be signing.
I want to clarify too, we're going to start with an introduction by Eileen. Eileen will explain our committee.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Eileen will be starting the presentation, and then I will add my piece. So Eileen, if you'd like to start, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Eileen Marma. I'm one of the co-chairs for the Oregon Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services Advisory Committee. The program for this advisory committee is housed under the Aging and People with Disabilities. Committee members have been appointed by the Adult and People with Disabilities Director. On the document that we sent you, will find the website for this advisory committee for more information. The advisory committee's purpose and responsibilities are to identify communication issues of Oregonians who may be deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing. We look for solutions and make recommendations to any agencies within the state's executive branch. Examples include, among other departments, ODHS, OHA, ODOT. That responsibility brings us here to address our concerns regarding the current statute, licensure for sign language interpreters. Danica is the next speaker.
Hello. My name is Danica. Danica Alexander. Can you see me okay?
The
Yeah.
lighting's not great.
Danica, you're a little backlit.
Danica, you're back.
Or just, yes.
Is that any better, or?
That's worse. Can you darken here?
Well, that's infrared, I can't, I can't do.
We have her turn the light off, so she's, because it's shining from behind her.
Make a background that's darker.
So my role is, I'm the co-chair of Oregon Deaf and Hard of Hearing Service Committee, Advisory Committee. What I want to discuss today was some talking points and some topics that you guys are already well aware of, I'm sure. But I still wanted to bring them up in hopes to becoming more familiar and how these relate to the deaf and hard of hearing community and what people are saying. Today, I'm representing Southern Oregon as well. Interpreters there have a really challenging time. People have a hard time finding interpreters in Southern Oregon. And then you have the licensing thing, it becomes more and more difficult. Interpreters are leaving the area. And honestly, it's just something that's really influencing and making it really hard for the deaf and hard of hearing community to get services.
Mookie, come here.
So, and a VRI is not always an option. So it's not necessarily a great accommodation. So it's just making it really, really tough. And I'm sure you're aware of that. Also, many people on the internet and whatnot have messaged me and talked to me about problems that they've had with different barriers in regards to the new law. So we wanted to talk about that with the ODHHS meeting as well. So we talked about that in the meeting, we wanted to bring that to you. So we met with Sammy and Robert about this topic. So we just got the basic understanding of what was discussed. And we decided to bring some of these issues to the committee to consider for your review and consideration. First, we'd like to bring up the idea that, or consider prior interpreting experience should be included when considering renewals. Because there are so many renewals, there's lots of situations where a renewal, where a new interpreter hasn't necessarily been interpreted, sorry, I'm a little awkward today. So interpreters may have been interpreting and then they try to get their license renewal. And they seem kind of like a new interpreter, but they're not. They've been working. So, in the educational license doesn't consider prior interpreting experience, even though this interpreter has been working for some time. And they're trying to get a new license. But I think experience should be included and considered in that process. Because interpreters who have prior experience, it should be considered. Also, we want to suggest the creation of a pathway, creating a new pathway to encourage people have multiple endorsements, to have the medical and legal, like, it sounds like the new bill would actually be removing those things. So we might be looking forward to some of that. Also, we've seen a need for prior interpreters who've tried to get their license. Some of them have been really impacted, newer interpreters
Trying to get their, newer interpreters trying to get their certification and then also with the license, trying to find work. So we were thinking, why not provide, like community service for them to be paired up or mentored with a supervisor.
or somebody who has those credentials that they could be paired with, so they could get that experience. They could go to deaf events, they could go to deaf functions. And I think those things need to be valued. I think that experience is necessary to become a certified interpreter. So I was just thinking about other different ways that, like the DMV license, you know, to get a driver's license, if you are a young driver, you have to log all of your hours. I think the same should be applicable to interpreting students and people who are, you know, younger interpreters, so that they can document some of that experience. And lastly, I understand that House Bill 950 is addressing some of the issues about the newer interpreters in training. ODHHS committee really is looking forward to finding out more about that process. And finally, we would like to bring up that the work is already, the work that you've already done has been wonderful, and we really appreciate all the work that you guys have done this. And I understand that it's a lot, it's incredibly complicated, and so we want to thank you for the work that you have been doing. And for the problems the laws have caused. So hopefully we can continue to support and continue to understand. And on a personal note, I'm looking forward to, I applied for the RAC and I was accepted, and I will be on the RAC. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can partner together, and I'm open to communication and any other feedback or questions. Our committee is happy to consider anything as well. So thank you so much. Thanks so much for your time and your energy.
Thanks, Danica.
We're gonna pause for an interpreter switch as well.
Yes, and we will take a 5-minute break. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna go to executive session. I'm gonna read the whole script. So the Board of Sign Language Interpreters Rules Advisory Committee will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660-2F, ORS 192-355-9A, and ORS 40.225 for the purpose of considering information exempt from public disclosure at 10:47 a.m. on February 5th, 2025. Representatives of the news media shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Audience members attending through Zoom will now be moved into a separate breakout room. Audience members in person are asked to leave the room both for the duration of the executive session. Those authorized to attend the executive session, please continue to keep your phone muted and cameras off. Are there any representatives of the news media in Zoom or in the room? Recognizing there is there any news media on Zoom?
Not that I know of.
Recognizing there is no news media in attendance, the public will be moved into a separate breakout room for the duration of the executive session. They'll return to open session before taking any final actions or making any final decisions. It is estimated that the committee will return to public session at
11:30.
Please be aware that it is possible that the committee's executive session may last longer than 11:30. If the public has any questions about whether the committee is still in executive session, then public can contact Josh Page at Josh dot Page at oha.oregon.gov. We are now in executive session. Now we're gonna do some switching around. Board of Sign Language Interpreters Rules Advisory Committee will now exit executive session and reconvene open session at 12:53 p.m. No final decisions were made and no votes were taken in executive session. The public will be moved from the breakout room back into the meeting, and representatives of the news media may once again report all board discussions and actions. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, so it is 1:04 on the agenda. We have ending at 2, having public comment at 2. We need to schedule additional meetings, kind of get, there's not really enough time to probably work out rule language, but definitely give me some ideas of the way you want to start thinking, and then I can draft during the interim. So let's start with meeting dates, so we can get that on the record here. So I was thinking like every 8 to 10 weeks, since like the bill and everything, and that way I'd have more time to, see how it's going. But because I do think you guys should keep, some people have said, let's not meet them, but I think you guys still have work to do, with or without the bill, so I think we're good.
Before June 30th.
Yeah. You didn't know that with me. Okay, so let's look at the date. So you guys, is 10 weeks good, 8 weeks, what are you thinking?
What does April 2nd look like?
We're looking at Wednesdays.
Are we Wednesdays? On that Wednesday, the board.
About the 3rd?
Sign language is meeting that day.
So you're not available?
I'm not on the board
Yet.
The 9th. The 9th or the 30th. Or
About 9. Even better.
Can someone restate what date are we looking at? This is Christy.
April 9th.
April 9th.
What about April 10th?
I have. You could do April 10th.
This is Nissa. April 10th is amazing for me.
I can do the 10th.
This is Caitlin. I can also do the 10th.
Okay, let's do. The May 21st?
Which one?
May 21st?
No.
May 28th? May 22nd?
28th is fine.
Does the 28th work for Nissa, Caitlin, and Christy?
This is Caitlin. It works for me.
This is Nissa. Yes, it works for me.
Yes.
That was May 28th. May 28th. Oh, Josh will send out an email with all the dates. Want to do one more?
Yeah.
Okay. We could do the 9th of July.
June out.
Well, June's right when the legislation's gonna wrap up. So, but we'll know what's done in July. We'll know what we've got. Right.
You say the 9th?
When were we?
The 9th or the 16th
Yeah, June.
or 23rd.
9 works for me.
Some other countries are working on fair. July 9th.
Listen, Christy, I'm not available until the 23rd.
Yeah, I'm not available July 9th.
23rd.
23rd works for me.
Yeah, 23rd's good.
Okay, I'm putting it down. Okay. Now let's talk about direction on, so I'm gonna repeat the dates really quick. April 10th, May 28th, and July 23rd. And they'll all start at 9:30, and you can be in person preferably, or you can be online. Doesn't matter, either way. Okay, so the last time we met, you guys were working on the generalist license. And we had talked about somehow kind of trying to find a way to roll up all the credentials into an easier, instead of having all these different things, like having the examination be what you, the qualifier to get a license for the generalist, or having certain qualifications. So you could have, you could take like some from RID and some from CASLI and really specify E18, have a degree, AFB, color purple, whatever things that you want to do, you list them like that. And then you don't have to like, so then you won't have to always be changing it if say you wanted to, because we can't give away our power to like RID and say, whatever RID says we're gonna do. So kind of those are the areas that we're thinking, either taking the examination route, so ask the CASLI. Or list out qualifications that you think would be the way to go. So you can kind of give me the direction, how you want me to go, and I will draft something during the interim. I've already actually drafted one part. I drafted the examples. I did this a while ago, so I guarantee nothing. It actually looks quite a lot like provisional. Provisional has the exam path, and then it also has a critical. Examination pathway, have a credentialing pathway? I can't remember.
Let's see.
Right, hold on. Yeah, so they have academic degree pathway and exam pathway, and then education and training pathway. So they don't actually have a credential pathway. So, I mean, but you could do both if you want to. So here's how I kind of laid it out. But again, this is. Really rough. And I did them a while ago. So is the exam way kind of what you're thinking? So if we looked at this, it would be on page 3, the pathway 1 examination. And then if you passed the 2,
Sammy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do those of us online have access to what you just passed out?
yes, they're in your packet. Oh, no, you don't. Nope, I'll send it right now. This is on the phone. Christine. Yes, sir.
Okay, we're gonna switch interpreters.
This computer here. And you got, almost there. Okay, I sent it. Sorry about that, I just was. So. So the first part of pathway 1 would be the CASLI generalist knowledge and the performance exam. So passing both of those would get you a generalist license. Or, and if these are incorrect, let me know. The CASLI generalist CDI exam. Is that a different performance exam? They're the same?
I don't think you need that one. I think the first one covers it.
It's really unclear on the website.
I'm not really understanding which one on that now?
We're on page 4, that I passed out.
Page 4.
Yes.
See the yellow part. That part there. So under pay, it says.
Are we giving you corrections now?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, on page 4, pathway 2 credentials, I would like to unstrike through. NAD 3, 4, and 5.
You guys had me strike through it at one of your meetings.
I disagree.
You did. And you had me strike through all of those ones. That's why I did it, but I haven't.
I believe I might have misspoke.
Happy to have you back.
No, yeah. Keep those babies in there. We're trying to get more, not less.
There's a side conversation to need to be putting all that on record.
I mean, technically,
Sammy.
Yeah.
Darcy was saying that she thinks the name of the performance test for deaf interpreters is different, so she's gonna check and see what it is right now.
it appeared different, but that means nothing.
Okay. Agreed. Did you already strike ASLPI?
No, I brought back in the NADs.
Okay, put the NAD back. Trying to remember why you guys removed it.
Because almost no one has it.
That might be why.
Except for me,
Oh,
thank you,
But
Darren.
you have
But you
other
have the
credentials
other
too.
one. Of what?
NAD.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to
I mean,
have it.
almost no, it hasn't been offered in over 20 years.
There are 6 interpreters in the state of Oregon that only hold NAD credentials. And so I just don't want, and they're working interpreters.
Yeah.
So it behooves us to keep them in, especially for in rural areas.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about your data.
I smell
like-
it when you give me the stink eye.
I would like to replicate that study and find out the truth.
It's very quick, RID.org search.
Sammy, this is Christy. I'm sorry, I still haven't received the information.
This is Darcy. I have a question for you, Sammy. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this. So if you follow the pathway, okay, so there's the pathway. If you, I'm looking at this. Okay, this requirement does not require proof. Pathway 1 does not require proof, and then there's not for the second one, but then for the third one, there's 3 different pathways, is what I'm looking at. So that means any of these 3 are acceptable to obtain a generalist certificate, is that correct? Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Nissa, did you get it?
Yes, it just came through. Thank you.
This is Lori. Did we intentionally not include the SLPI?
If it's not there, then yes.
And this is Amanda. I don't think ASLPI should be there either.
Why? Yes, I know that.
It's not a credential for interpreting. It's not a qualification for interpreting. The ASLPI alone is not a qualification for an interpreter.
Well, then I would say the same thing about the SLPI.
Agreed. I have been the minority in that though, so feel free to outvote me.
There are 2 different things there, the ASLPI and the SLPI. Those are 2 different, totally separate things. They're not. Right, because signing skills. SLPI is more of a evaluation, of a way to evaluate. It's very different than the ASLPI. Their approaches are different. One looks at language, one looks at language knowledge. So there are 2 different approaches.
So are we keeping ASLPI or removing? And I need to know a direction for the future.
We agree to remove the ASLPI for the generalist certificate. Which one are you looking at, Darcy says? Because if this is included in this one, then I think we don't do it here, it's not required because they're conflicting seemingly, is that correct?
Yeah, I think Amanda over here was saying that that's, not a part of needing that to be an interpreter at all, so.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, we can remove that.
But she had my name. It's always-
Okay. Are both the EIPA both good?
This is Amanda. Lori, I'm gonna defer to you on this, or anyone else who has the EIPA knowledge, but do you think there's a particular reason that they've called out MCE? Particularly Christy too, sorry, Christy, I just didn't have my eyes on you. Why would we not just say EIPA level 4.0 or above? Why specify PSE or ASL?
Because they can choose whichever one they want to take.
Right. So why have a specification of
Yeah, no, we're gonna
anything?
have the same score, it doesn't matter.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is there a reason to have them specified out?
No, we probably just tried to make it clear, but
Okay.
I think it's fine the other way too.
I mean, if we want to be clearer, I guess that is clearer, but it also now precludes the MCE one because there is an MCE one. I don't know if it's gone on hiatus, but it means that you can't have that one. Manually coded English. I don't know if anyone takes that.
I think we could just say EIPA 4.0 or above. Chrissy?
And Caitlin, I guess too.
Yes, I'm in agreement. This is Christy.
This is Caitlin. I also agree.
This is Nissa. I agree.
Yes.
Sammy, this is Amanda. When you say direction, do you mean like, yeah, we want to do the tests, or what's the direction you want from us?
Do you want to do multiple things with the pathways for, generalists? Is there a certain set of other criteria, or do you just want to go with what I have?
I see what you're saying. This is Amanda again. Sorry to muddy the waters, or not. Do we want for pathway 1 to include the BEI exams that are embedded in BEI? So like the English language proficiency test and the performance tests at the various levels? Like, do we want to name those tests?
English proficiency and.
Yeah, hold on. Performance tests that are kind of embedded in the BEI? Or are we only doing the tests at the national level? It's up to you guys. Yeah, let me try that one more time.
Yeah.
So,
We already have those two there.
Right. Right, that's true, but like, if you actually have the actual BEI certification, but remember, pathway 1 that talks about tests, like, included in the certifications, like, and as long as you pass the test, and then, would that be equivalent to BEI or the other pathway? Because BEI has language equivalent skills, it's got performance, got different levels, they have level 1 through 5, and then people go, 1 and 2 is like low, and then people 5. So do you want to include that test? Because it'd be under a separate one. And we'll do that as another way to get towards credentials.
I have a question for you, Amanda. I'm gonna start with the BEI for lecture 1, 2, 3. And the intermediary certificates. 3, 4, 5, those bottom ones. 1, 2, and 3 here. 3. And then there's 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, 3, 4, 5. Yeah,
And
3, 4,
then
5.
master and
So
the
master,
second one.
second one is 4 and then 3.
That's my question. What do they have? Equivalent?
I don't know. So let's go back a little bit and I think the BEI has 2 different tests. At least they did. They have a number system and now they have changed it to a different like specialties or masters or like they've changed the name of these.
For provisional, you can have a basic.
We're gonna take a moment to switch interpreters. Go ahead.
Sammy, this is Amanda. Is pathway 2 unnecessary then if we have the tests listed in pathway 1? Or is it just like, is it an easier thing for you all to process if I just have the certificate and it makes a pathway? Is it redundant?
Well, this is a credential, not a test.
Right, but if we've taken out the tests and said that they are a thing that can happen for pathway 1, and those tests equal a credential.
Did all of you guys take that test? Did all of you take that test?
No, good point. Because, it's the name of the test that we're talking about too, right? Because the names have changed over time, yeah. That makes sense. So that it's more inclusive to have both pathways.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, tests. And then take out or here. Use one and then add.
Yeah, I agree.
It's all the same pathway.
It is the same pathway.
No, because one's tests and one's credentials.
Yeah. Or you can have a test to get the credential.
That's what inclusive, because, for example, Melanie and Amanda did not take the Catholic Generalist Knowledge exam. We would be non-licensable.
Correct.
If we don't include the certifications.
That's the way I think, but I mean, I'll have to double check that. Or did you?
So,
The dinosaur.
yeah, she didn't, I know she didn't. So I think for now, both pathways are appropriate for including historical and new dinosaurs and new ones. Being a dinosaur myself.
I don't know why I asked you that.
This is Lori. Sammy, under pathway 3, number 7, shouldn't it be a capital A right under that?
Yeah, it's all messed up.
Okay, I just keep staring at it, I'm like, it just doesn't look right no matter what I do with my.
I had the one right above it wrong.
Okay, thank you.
It's complicated.
So should we add the RID national certification, the NIC?
Yeah.
And then just.
The NIC, you have to take the passage, right?
Sammy, what'd you say?
The NIC.
You have to take the CASLI exams with the NIC.
This is Darcy, because the certification has changed names. Before it was, there's a new test now, so before RID had an NIC. That's like the grandfathered in licensure. So that would be at a pathway 2.
Yes. It should probably be at the top, because see how it says RID, National Interpreting Certification, Advanced and Master? There's actually one that's just RID, National Interpreter
But
Certification.
to get those, the only way to get those is to take the test.
No, because I have an NIC. Well, I haven't, I'm asking though, so I qualify, but I have an NIC, didn't take that
According to
test.
their website, the only way to get the CASLI, the only way to get that credential is to take the test.
But we predate CASLI, and we have NICs.
You're just missing one of those tests.
So that very
I
top,
took it out, that's why.
oh, okay. There just
But I
needs to
don't
be
know why
one,
you have both.
there needs to be one that doesn't have an advanced or master at the top of this list.
I guess somebody could just take CASLI and never get certified. Never get-
They could.
They could need to have both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, look at it. I could get credentialed though.
Because, this is Darcy. So because there's some new tests now, the CASLI for is like the general test. CASLI general test. The RID and IC tests, they're totally different. So we need to include both of them.
Say that again.
We need to include both tests, the NIC and the CASLI. And we need to include both of them.
So in pathway 2.
So in deaf interpreter certification before, was there only the CRC and CASLI 2?
I believe it has everything that's on their list, the moratorium list, the other list, except I took the top 2 off, so I added it back in.
The RSC is also missing.
RSC?
It's called the reverse skills certificate. I think the board had you take it off.
No, it was you. It was this
Because,
group,
I mean,
and it was the day that.
that was like, what, 20 years
Amber
ago?
was gone.
They don't even provide the test.
Right, I mean, it hasn't been offered in forever, but I think there's 1 or 2 people who have that.
Yeah, there might be 2, 3. But they,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
there is other pathways.
Do you want me just to go on to the RID and just put them all in there, because that's what I did before?
So we're just talking about that reverse skills certificate for deaf interpreters. That was offered way back. They haven't offered it for, gosh, more than 15, 20 years. They closed that down. And so there's a new test, the what?
The CDI test.
Oh, the CDI test, the new one is called the CDI. Okay, so now there's the new CDI test, the certified, to be certified. So this reverse skills test, the last time it was offered, gosh, I feel like it was 15, 20 years ago. It's been shut down since, so there's like nothing. But we were just kind of discussing, like, there might be a few deaf people that still have that old test. But I feel like they'd be able to satisfy different pathways, those 2 or 3 people. So, because they would have the CDI current test.
So this is Amanda, just in case for rationale purposes. I think we should add the RSC back in because it's the only one not there. And if we're going to say that it's excluded, then we should exclude the CSC and the interpreting certificate and transliteration certificate because they are in the same category of age. So either we take the list as it is, or we parse all the parts of the list, in my mind. So I would just put that.
And this is Mel. Just to avoid the appearance of bias or preferential treatment to some individuals, because our community is so small, my strong recommendation would be to include everything on RID's website.
I'll do that again, not a problem. I will do anything you guys want.
Pretty sure we're your favorite, right?
Gotta have somebody. You're winning over the Dems right now. I don't have piercing, you do not mind. They use piercing.
No, we're not up there. Dang it.
All right. Okay. So is there, so generally speaking, good?
Yeah.
We've got the experience in spin pathway.
Haven't done pathway 3.
I don't understand. I don't understand the little B on page
Oh,
5.
don't please don't look at the number.
Don't
I had it all screwed up. And I don't even know if it's right now.
Yeah,
It's Jack.
but in general, I'm with you, totally with you on this, in general.
Because
I
this
have
one
no
wouldn't
idea.
require them to take the performance.
Say that again.
This wouldn't require them to take the performance.
No, if they have a credential, they have a credential. Right, isn't that what that's under?
It's experience and exam.
Oh.
So 3 letters of recommendation.
Oh, I see, sorry. Right, correct. That's right. Yep. Yep.
Ms. Darcy? I have a quick question. So under pathway 3, it says a board approved sending agency list of, do I have a list of?
No, I asked for the list.
Can you say that again?
Or I asked to define it and we didn't get that far.
Asking for a list of approved,
To define what that is.
prefer agencies.
So I feel like we need to be more specific on how someone is gonna measure, how someone is gonna approve that. Because that will make it different for who you contact to get a letter. You know, we gotta make that there'll be a difference on who people contact, so I feel like we need to be a little more specific there.
I agree.
Could the RAC develop a list? Is that something that we could, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, like, put that in?
To recommend.
Criteria?
You want criteria, or you could do a list. You could either.
Just have like local agencies. Put that in. Meaning like approved agency from outside the state, like would that be fine? Or just Washington, Oregon, like local agencies? Like what does that look like for us in the rule? I feel like we need some clarification on that.
That's a can of worms.
Yeah, worms are gonna go over there.
But that's what it says now. I mean,
Right, it says this because I wasn't given any extra definition.
so many of our licenses though are from outside of state. So that list, I mean, meaning we should probably have it broad.
But how do we know those agencies are? That's what I'm wondering, like, do we need to include that in here, and how do we measure, like, how do we know? So if myself, I'm working, and I am my own business, and I set my own, I am my own agency, and I get forever no letter, and I'm approved, look, here it is. I'm an LLC, I got to do it myself, I mean, I only have 2 people, whatever, like, or if it's a big agency, or do we need, some sort of clarification on the type of agency that can write the letters? So.
You need to define it.
We have those 3.
Or you could remove it.
What do you guys think?
But does that really happen? That there's one person and they call themselves an agency?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Really?
Midwives do it every day. And I just pulled up their rule, so I can give you an example of what they've done.
Oh, okay.
So for peer review, it's,
Yes, please.
Peer reviews, LDN must participate in these 2 peer reviews. So they've specified it by a charter and standards.
So you could just
Say
use your
again?
best friend.
So it's, would be an midwifery peer review organization or midwifery quality improvement organization that maintains a charter and standards for peer review.
Means nothing out there.
Not a lot.
I think the purpose behind that requirement was to make sure they had the opportunity to work, like if the agency is willing to hire them, then they could say, okay, yeah, so they could use that person as an interpreter. So the board approved, I think it just needs to be an agency that hires the person, but it's, very vague, I understand. And, like, yeah, you're like, I'm an agency myself, I hire myself. But I think the purpose of that was to make sure that there was opportunity for work. And someone in the community said, yep, they are worth hiring to work. But criteria for, the agency itself, how many hours, the reputation, yeah, we don't know that.
We're gonna take a moment to switch interpreters.
Sorry, Lori.
I would vote 5 or more people.
Like employees.
That was wrong.
Contractors? Contractors?
Employees.
Employees. Do agencies have employees?
5 or more. Employees.
It's the same thing.
Independent contractor is not an employee. The tax would argue with you.
Who's being paid? Are they being paid? Whether or not they take the taxes out? I would say that's an employee.
As an employee, but an employee has a specific meaning under the IRS.
Worker.
Or worker.
Interpreters, an agency with 5 or more interpreters. Interpreters, okay, above 5 interpreters, okay.
I'm hiring all my friends. So it's not.
Myself, I.
So myself and I, and you, okay, and you.
If you take all the time and energy to do that, you'll have a life.
This is Caitlin.
And also.
Oh, was Darcy speaking?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I will say agencies with over 5 interpreters could be pretty limiting depending on the rural area. So just something to keep that in mind.
This is Darcy, like. I guess we have to be careful with language. Again, some agencies, might not understand, ASL, what an ASL interpreter needs or whatever, and they just might hire people like, oh, you know how to sign, great, come work for me. And then there's other agencies that are, well-versed in working with ASL interpreters, and they know how to accommodate and match interpreters appropriately, depending on the context of the job. So, there's definitely some pros and cons. Absolutely. Lori?
What if we moved up the board-approved sign language interpreter agency and then say or, and then the rest of them have to be together required? Or something like that. So we're separating,
More important than the other.
we're separating the agency from like people letters of reference. Because we might have people who are actually freelance interpreters who don't use an agency, right?
Would they be freelancing at this point? I guess we're not licensed now, but not in the future.
Yeah, for instance, like if there's an interpreter, that freelance interpreter that wants to work directly with, let's say, a hospital, like, they would have to, pretty much, develop their own agency for themselves, so then we can then sign a contract with them. So that's, I feel like,
But would you need a letter of recommendation from the agency? That's what I'm questioning, is the big A.
Good question, Lori. So like what you and Natalie were just talking about. So if there's an interpreter that's an independent contractor
What experience? They look the same as, you know, do they look the same as an employee or an independent contractor? Would they be getting a letter? Like, would you get a letter as an independent contractor?
Would a hospital be willing to write a letter to them as an independent contractor?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I would say, I'm just kind of thinking about, we're thinking about doing this with spoken language. So what we're thinking is like, we had a specific language classification, so we were trying to contract an interpreter, so they wouldn't be an employee, but then we would be able to, request for them to come in and provide the services, and then we would pay for those services. So maybe, we might be able to provide something saying that they have a contract with us, but that's pretty much what we would be able to say. We would not be able to, give any more information about like that, yeah.
What if you
would know
did-
their skills anyway.
Exactly, that's what I mean, we would not be able to.
As a person who does hire interpreters, I do call and get recommendations. And I do tend to call agencies because they have a different perspective of professionalism. If there's been any reports of misconduct, would they hire them again? That type of stuff that might not come in from a colleague. And so I do often ask, or if the agencies have heard of them, because I have a bigger network of contractors than I might in my little
What if you said organization where sign language interpreter services are provided, including but not limited to? Give me a list: hospitals, agencies, which agency is weird, because what does that mean? But you can give me some other ones, you can say organizations, organizations is broad, so it can be anything. But you can give me a list of other things. That you think would work?
What if we call them interpreting agencies? Because agency is a big, broad word in the legal world, but in our world, we know what an agency is, right? So the applicants are gonna know what an agency means.
That's a good question. Is it an organization where the service is provided, hospital, or is it must be an agency, interpreter agency? What are you looking for? It's two different things.
I think either, but I think you said agency felt too broad, so I was saying if you could add interpreter agency, so hospital, interpreter agency, school district, whatever.
But we're requiring from an agency.
She's changing the word. That's what she just proposed. And a letter from an organization that blah, 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 she said something about organizations. I can't remember what you said now, Cindy, sorry.
Okay.
Organizations where sign language interpreter services are provided, including not limited to hospitals, sign language interpreter agencies.
Okay.
I mean, colleges.
Yeah.
Could you do K-12 and post-secondary?
This is Christy. I was just gonna say, where does the K-12 setting fit into this?
Yeah, school district.
So every year's a bit
Who was
broad.
that? Sorry, who was that?
Chrissy.
And this is Darcy. Maybe we could say something about, like a spoken language agency cannot provide. Could we put that? A spoken language agency or organization can't provide if it has to be an interpreting, has to be a sign language interpreting agency to provide a letter for interpreting services.
So could it be bold and make it?
You want to make exclusive language that says it can't be a spoken language?
What if they were doing both?
So trying to be more inclusive, so just interpreting
Then leave it that
agencies,
way, we'll just leave it
not
that
just
way.
spoken, yeah, so spoken or signed, it's fine, so just.
As long as they've got the sign language interpreting going on, that's all we need.
Do we include it? Because, for example, many interpreters licensed, like out of state, what kind of agency do they have there? You know, do they work for spoken language interpreting agencies or do they work for sole ASL interpreting agencies? So, again, we'd have to do more data collection to speed the statistics about that. But so that's what I was thinking.
Going back, I remember realizing that the emphasis on sign language was because here in Oregon, we do have a history of spoken language referring agencies hiring non-certified interpreters, where the interpreters were unethical in practice and performing sign language interpreting duties. So under a spoken language entity interpreting umbrella. Is that correct?
You're gonna have troubles.
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember the reason.
This is the interpreters, there's only 2 of us, please.
We've got about 6 more minutes.
I feel like, this is Darcy, I feel like we should just leave it as is. Natalie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, yeah, if we could just keep it as interpreting agencies, just because, again, we work with, that's a one agency that is only for sign language, but then we have an access with 8 other ones that provide BRI services, and then also in-person services, but then they also provide spoken language interpreters, so if we can just keep it more, including both. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Any direction, like as far as extenuating circumstances or exemptions that you want me to look into? What those might be, what the parameters might be, or we can wait till the next meeting.
This is Lori. I'm wondering for C and D at the bottom of page 5, are we requiring proof of these things? Proof of 50 hours, proof of education?
Yes.
So we're not gonna say that.
It says it up under little c. Submit proof of all the following.
It's 7 on your paper.
Yeah, screwed up. Yeah, 7.
Yes, there it is.
Thank you. Don't ask me. I'm sure it would involve a small laptop early in the morning. Okay.
We're gonna go ahead and switch it to this.
I'm ready.
Oh, I didn't. I might not feel like this. Might be sure. Let me hand it out
This is Mel. When I've been thinking about some of the statute and wanting to have some clarification on exemptions for licensure. Because I do feel like we don't have something in place sooner rather than later to utilize deaf interpreters.
So what would be?
It's dangerous here.
So, hold on, let me get there. Let's say it's.
Are they all public comment, Bob?
Excuse me?
They're just 2.
Are they all?
It's just two public comments.
Well, it looks like you can do, an extenuating circumstance, but there isn't like an exemption, like you can exempt these people.
Okay, so, okay, hold on. So then under those types of circumstances, an extenuating circumstance?
Could be like the person speaks, if they doesn't do ASL, they have to do something else, or
I'm just thinking of like in case of a situation where to empower deaf consumers, like if a deaf person themselves states that they would like to have a deaf interpreter available to them so that they can have more effective communication. That would be an extenuating circumstance to consider, as well as like mental health situations.
so let me work through this, so it would be, an extenuating circumstance applies when a deaf person wants a different interpreter.
When they specify that they want a deaf interpreter there. And maybe a certified interpreter is not readily available.
Are you saying certified interpreter or a licensed interpreter? Just for clarification for this interpreter.
There's not a licensed interpreter available. What does that look like, I guess? Because what I see happening now most of the time is in medical settings.
Can we back up and just clarify what are we talking about exactly?
Like,
Are we on public comment right now, or are we on?
We're gonna be.
So I'm thinking like right now, as a hearing interpreter who's licensed, I have all my credentials. I go into a hospital and I say, oh my gosh, this person, for whatever medical reason, mental health, end of life, giving birth, whatever, requires the use of a deaf interpreter. And because we have 4 in the state of Oregon and I can't find one, I want to be able, as a licensed interpreter, to use my professional judgment and say, I need a deaf interpreter here. And what, to me, that is a situation that needs to be addressed. And if that falls under extenuating circumstances, it's me making that decision and then working with that deaf interpreter in tandem and joining me there. Does that make sense?
Figure that out.
This is Amanda. Is the challenge that we should be defining the circumstance rather than the solution?
I think you could do either way.
Okay.
Okay.
But, I mean, based on what we know, is a deaf interpreter must be licensed based on what the legislature said. So I'm not sure you can have an extenuating circumstance to have someone not be licensed. I'm gonna find that out.
That's a good
Sure.
one. I don't know.
More to come.
Can we also find out, like, okay, so like, instead, there's, communication must happen, and then there's no, licensed interpreter available. Could that be also one of the extenuating circumstances where we could then work with an interpreter that is not licensed to provide that service? I'm just kind of thinking, just to give a context, let's say we have a patient, it's like if we have something pre-scheduled, most likely we can get something, an interpreter to come overnight. But then if a patient comes in the middle of the night, and then let's say there's no interpreter available to provide that service, in person or not licensed interpreter through your eye, could we still continue to work with a video interpreter that is not licensed to provide this service in the emergency department, middle of the night?
No, because then anybody can just practice, right? It's all an extenuating circumstance.
The thing is, like,
There's no one available. Oh, hey.
well, the thing is, like, if the patient is there, and then if we do not provide access, then we're also violating their rights to have access to communication.
You'd have to narrow it, I think. Maybe medical, I'm not sure, I'll have to ask.
Yeah.
Ooh. What if there's an extenuating circumstance?
And what? And something else.
Like, the extenuating circumstances was nobody available who's licensed, but they are on the interpreter registry. I don't know about that.
So this is Amanda, and maybe along those same lines, I feel like would it also be helpful, or could we also define who that other person is? Like Natalie's example, what I kind of wanted to say was a non-licensed person, but someone who's qualified. Like, and then you have to define qualified, I totally get that. So that's the registry, or that's certified in another state or something like that. But it can't just be like, you call my husband Mike, who can say, hi, my name is Mike in sign language. You know what I mean? Like, that's not gonna work. Right?
Yeah, no,
You know what I mean? So I think there needs to be some parameters about who the licensed person can be, like what their qualifications are.
I mean, like, no licensed interpreter, but qualified.
Right, exactly.
No
Yeah,
licensed
yeah,
qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Because I know you were thinking of the
Yes,
ARI
so
interpreters in other
you
states.
guys give me one or two of you who I can call to get clarification on this.
Sure.
How about Natalie?
Yep.
Sure. Okay, now we're gonna go to public comment. Everyone give that? Okay. I'm gonna sheet here. At this time, the Board of Sign Language Interpreters Rules Advisory Committee will hear public and interested parties' feedback. Public comment is limited to matters listed on the agenda or topics relevant to this committee, what this committee has statutory authority to regulate. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and will not be allowed if they are disruptive to the committee's conduct of its business. If you are called on to comment, HLO staff will request the public member to unmute themselves. The HLO reserves the right to end the person's comment early and have HLO staff mute the public member if the comment does not pertain to matters listed on the agenda or topics relevant to this committee's statutory authority to regulate. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? If so, please raise your hand or use Zoom or acknowledge yourself in the room. And we have 2 written pieces of comment that we received. So there's not really a designated way if you want somebody to read it out loud, if you just want to read it yourselves. Yeah, one of them is from Cheyenne Baumgartner, and she sent this on November 19th. And it's about fees. Oh, it's about the limited waiver. So she paid her fees and then we extended the limited waiver. Matched up. So there's that. Oh, and concerned about the number of renewals, which we know is in the law. And fees. So that's what this one's about. And then this one is clarifying Senate Bill 950. So the timeline is short, but the changes proposed in Senate Bill 950 do not require rulemaking. I highlighted this.
Can you say that again? Does not require what?
Changes proposed in Senate Bill 950 do not require rulemaking. Just because it doesn't say by rule, determined by the board means by rule.
Yeah.
I mean, without saying rule, that's what it means. So maybe that's incorrect, and maybe we can get the legislature to put that on the record. But that's the way I've interpreted it.
Sorry, which piece are we looking at? Sorry.
Oh, the HLO rack public comment. And so she's just giving you an overview of what Anybody on the Zoom want to comment?
Hands up.
I can't tell. Hold on.
Somebody has their hand raised.
Nobody?
Sammy, this is Caitlin. Can I actually make a comment to follow up on Christina's letter?
Sure.
So for those of you who are asking who is behind this bill, there is a committee under ORID. It is not the ORID board itself, but a committee that was established because there were several ORID members who were concerned about how this process has been, and the statute that we are currently working with. So a couple of people got together and came up with these amendments. So again, like Lori mentioned earlier, the amendments are beautiful on the ORID website if you want to check it out. But it's not just a random legal group that's doing it. It is interpreters that are working on these amendments.
Like there is, Senate Bill 950 requires. If you're going to supervise somebody, you must hold a supervisor license. So generalists won't be able to supervise anymore. So if you don't have enough supervisors to do your in-training people and your provisional, so that's limiting, right? That would be one that, I mean, you don't need a rule about that, but. Correct. Especially when you have to be in person. And I'm guessing it's because the supervisor has 3 years of experience. That's why they're letting them supervise them. That's the only difference in the law. Okay. But again, I encourage you guys to read it, look at it. It comes up for hearing, comment if you want to. We shall see what goes, how it goes. Anybody else want to make any comments?
This is Darcy speaking. I just wanted to clarify, if the Senate bill passes, 950 passes, the old bill, interpreting bill, I don't know what number it is, as we look at both of those bills, will that modify the rules? Some of the language that's in the first one, as opposed to the second one, are contradictory, and they will conflict with each other. So how or who is responsible for making those changes and understanding the impacts that will have on the rule process and HLO going forward? Because it seems that these two things, the information, some of it should be kept, and then some of it won't be included in the second bill. There are some good recommendations from this new bill. So it seems that from this group of people who are recommending this haven't checked the entire deaf community or interpreting community. So I'm just putting that out there, rectifying these two bills. What is that process going to look like, and will it work?
We would not like to be involved in that unless they were asked to be.
Anymore?
Not yet. Well, when we were, way beyond. You want to go probably to the constituents that asked Senator Solomon to make the changes, and they would be able to tell you why they decided. And that website is very helpful. It does kind of teach you the layout, so awesome.
So we talked about the central board.
But the House bill, and then the Senate bill is a small bill. So the House bill would sort of trump the Senate bill. So if it were to pass, then maybe we could sort of interject some of it into the House bill. I don't know how they're gonna work together necessarily, but big one.
So that's the work that we are doing?
Yeah, so let's say it passes just how it is today. The Senate Bill 950. So let's say it passes today, then we wouldn't need the education license, we wouldn't have to do that work, we wouldn't have to do the work for legal or medical, we wouldn't have to do any of that work. We would have to do the training work and all the application requirements. I think we would have to put fees in the rule. I've never seen fees anywhere else in my 30 years with the government. And so I don't know about that, so we have to go and rule, determining renewal, how many renewals for certain things, what that criteria looks like. So yeah, and I think maybe it would be, maybe if I show you something, where is it showing? It'd be easier to understand. So, here's a copy. So if, when you see like section 1, section 2, and it's all bold, this is brand new. So at
Bold means new?
brand new, and so they don't have ORS, they don't have a statute number yet. So when they do, that will be March of 2026, we'll get a statute number. But if you look over here, so all these would be new. And then if you look over here, section 4 is modifying this one. And this, so this came out of 2696. And this is what is a statute that's in place now, so it will stay, and it will just add all this, take out that. Does that make sense? Is that easier?
So some,
Go back to that first page.
So this is new, so that's.
Kind of pending.
So this passes and then it's accepted.
modification to our license. So
That's the House bill. It was second.
is not yet proposed.
All this that's not bold is all happening today. So if it passes, the bold stuff would go in. You know, it's hard, it's not easy. It's all
Go in.
Sammy, this is Christy. I've received a text from a public member saying that they're unclear about this public comment because it wasn't read in its entirety. So they're not clear on what this person is saying about the rulemaking. I'm wondering if it might be helpful to read it.
I don't understand what you're asking.
I think she's saying there's somebody listening who doesn't know what this says because nobody's read it out loud.
If the committee wants to read it aloud, by all means. It'll be in the materials at the end of it, but we just received it, so.
This is Darcy. I think devil's advocate here for a moment. General question. So right now, the House bill, right, the House bill, so as it is read, and then you have the Senate bill, which sort of be included in the House bill, but it would get rid of the medical, clinical, and educational licensing requirements. So that would be the major change. So now we would sort of keep like the general, the provisional, the generalist, and the supervisory licenses, correct? So our rulemaking in the RAC, so we would just add sort of a side note onto some of those things, like the generalist license and supervisory stuff, some of the requirements there, maybe we can't, I don't know, but so just like keep it general. So like anybody can interpret in the medical and educational and legal field, but they have to follow their own set of credentials. Can we do that?
You'll have to have a generalist, provisional, in training, or supervisor. if 950 passes in those current state.
There's no like training one, there's just like the medical, legal, and educational. No, medical, legal, yeah, educational, right?
And those would go away. And then to work in education, you have to be provisional, in training, generalist, or supervisor.
This is Christy. Can I take a moment to read this public comment? Is that a yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, RAC. My name is Christina Healy Collister. I'm a sign language interpreter here in Salem. Thank you all for your hard work on this committee. I am sorry I'm not able to be present during public comments, and I apologize that you did not receive information about Senate Bill 950 before this meeting.
What you did last week.
For some clarification. Timeline is short, but most of the changes proposed in Senate Bill 950 do not require rulemaking. Issues that the board and WAC have discussed many times over the last year, and that HO staff has repeatedly explained must be addressed by the state legislature, not the board and RAC. In that fight, the time frame is not just a 3-month window, but rather this entire past year. If these amendments are made, they reflect the fruit of much labor that we have watched you all do in your meetings over the last 12 months. Thank you all for your hard work, and we want to see your ideas come to reality. For example, the board and RAC spent hours in multiple meetings in 2024 trying to convince HLO to change fees to a more reasonable amount. 950 passes, the board can pass a motion to get that done in one meeting. They could be discussing now what would be reasonable costs. If the bill doesn't pass, they then would have a specific request to make to HLO with all the details specified. Removal of the 2-year renewal limit on the generalist license does not call for any rulemaking, nor does the longer renewal period of 3 years instead of annually. The removal of the specialty setting licenses would cut cost, confusion, redundancy, and save time and paperwork. Licensed interpreters would still need to follow previously established laws in those special settings, but they would not have to buy an extra piece of paper to show it. This would also allow provisional license holders to work in K-12 settings, which has been a big
Christy,
concern.
can you repeat your last sentence? You were really breaking up. So if other people are trying to hear you, we're not hearing you very well.
Okay, does it sound any better now?
It does now, but we missed a lot.
Okay, I'll reread the last paragraph. The removal of the specialty setting licenses would cut cost, confusion, redundancy, and save time and paperwork. Licensed interpreters would still need to follow previously established laws in those special settings, but they would not have to buy any extra piece of paper to show it. This would also allow provisional license holders to work in educational K-12 settings, which has been a big concern discussed by the board and RAC. And the much voiced concern of deaf interpreters being able to continue providing services in medical settings with a provisional license also would be fixed. All of this would be accomplished without more rulemaking. Incidentally, we met with representatives from the hospital organization, and they appreciated this approach for streamlining the process and enabling them to continue working with the same interpreters they already work with under the OHA certification. The board would need to decide the time limit for an out-of-state interpreter to work here. For example, coming into town for a weekend conference or other special event. And the bill gives the board the authority to establish reciprocity with other states, but it is not required. Before 2027, they would just need to decide new rates for licensure, what, if any, credentials are required for the training license, and the time limit for temporarily working in Oregon without the state license. I believe that could be done in one single meeting now that they are granted the authority, if Senate Bill 950 passes. Thank you again for your many hours and energy poured into this process. Please feel free to reach out with more questions to the ORID Legislative Committee. And once given, please do check out the information on the ORID licensure page.
All right. Are we want to talk about that?
Julie has her hand up.
Who's that, Josh?
Julie Reese.
Can we make Julie bigger? Yeah. And can we also spotlight Julie for her time? Y'all are so small, it's hard on my eyes. Can I go ahead? Yes. So someone mentioned something, can we have a limited number of days, I think in a year or a quarter, for interpreters to show up and work without a license? And then what about VRI settings? If there's no licensed interpreter, can VI be used? I'm just curious about those two things is all. So thank you guys.
I think it's really important to note that this is only an introduced bill. So please do not take this as official. I beg of you. Do not. It will change, I can almost guarantee. Or it won't go anywhere. Please don't take this like this is the end all. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
I guess that's it, then no one is, okay, thank you. That was Julie's comment.
Okay. Then the meeting is adjourned at 2:26 p.m.